and welcome to episode 183 of the HHH Racing Podcast. I am your proud host, Howard Kravitz. Thanks for joining us tonight on what will be a fantastic podcast covering the big races this weekend in New York, Belmont at Aqueduct, including Breeders' Cup Win and You're In, stake races, and the late pick 5 with a fantastic special guest, Jason Blewett from Point Thoroughbreds. Please make sure you subscribe on the bottom right-hand side of the screen. Smash that thumbs up button. That'll tell YouTube this is a great show. And then please make sure you hit the notification bell, which will tell you when new content will arise on the show. You can see my name tag at H Kravitz to reach me on Twitter. And then below on the scroll, you can find my email address, hkravitzhorse@gmail.com. Of course, you can listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Anchor on all those listening platforms. The formerly Race Day blog, now called Power Picks, is up and running. This is a fantastic time to get our Power Picks. If you don't know about our Power Picks, it's a tip sheet that comes out every Saturday. The ROI is close to $2.50. We've given out many pick 4s, pick 5s, ABC grids, 8-to-1 shots, 10-to-1 shots. You can look down below the video player. You sign up through Patreon. Highly recommend. If you have not looked into that, it is well worth your money, especially with big races coming up here in October and November. And then, of course, we have a fantastic website as well, hhhracingpodcast.com. I got a few other exciting things to talk about, but before we do that, I have to have my co-host join me for some very exciting news. Let's do that right now. From the Saratoga Special, Mr. Paul Halloran, and from Maryland, Pete Visco. Guys, how are we doing tonight?
What's up, Howard and Paul?
Long time no see.
Absolutely. Guys, we got some exciting news I want to talk about. First of all, I want to bring up something on the screen here. Let me just get this set up real quick here, because there's something very exciting happening this weekend on I didn't want to do that. Okay. I'll tell you, I'm not going to bring it up. We'll just talk about it. I'm going to bring up a banner instead, guys. Let me get rid of that. Okay. Sorry about that. There it is. Well, how do I get that off? Okay. Cancel it. Sorry. There we go. That's what I want to do, guys. So myself and Kyle, as you two know, but I don't know if the public knows, we are competing live for over $20,000 in prizes, including a BC seat. You can check us out 3 p.m. Eastern this Saturday on the Hawthorne Racecourse YouTube channel. We're going against some of the top handicappers in the country. It's an exciting live betting contest race, 6 mandatory races, $200 bets. And then the last race, Pete and Paul, is interesting. Everyone has to bet a minimum, get this, guys, a minimum of $800 in the last race, which is the Hawthorne Derby. It's a 3-year-old race for 1.1 miles on the turf, and you're going to guarantee to have $800 to bet into that race. So Kyle and I are going to be firing. Wish us good luck. We're going to try to represent the HHH Racing Podcast well, guys, and try to get a BC seat, which we're really excited about. Now, the other thing I want to mention, did you guys happen to watch the first race today at Aqueduct? Either one of you?
I did not.
I did not, but I saw some stuff on Twitter. It seemed like it was an eventful race, but I'm not really sure why. Maybe you could fill us in.
I got sure why, and our Jason Blewett might be find this pretty cool, considering he's in the ownership game with West Point. Yours truly broke his ownership maiden. I won my very first race ever as an owner. I have a very small piece, full disclosure. I have bigger pieces of other horses with Adelphi, but this horse right here, we're just going to show the stretch run, and I'll talk it through. The number 6, Funny How, for Adelphi Racing. This is a 3-year-old filly, New York bred. Broke her maiden today. How about 7-1, guys, beating Arrogant Lady? Here's Funny How, got a nice setup. Trevor McCarthy goes left hand and comes over the top. This was an open company race, by the way, guys. An open company race. And so she gets an extra almost $10,000, Paul, winning an open company race as a New York bred. And this purse already was $95,000. So there's Funny How right there, winning, broke my maiden. Do you guys remember winning your first race as an owner, guys?
TBA.
Oh, okay. Paul, Pete, you're with you've won some, obviously.
Yeah, I mean the very small amounts in the my racehorse game, but it's still fun when you, especially if you're watching a horse for a while and they're training up to their first race and then they get one. It's exciting no matter what. So I'll never complain about it, regardless of whether you get a little or basically no money out of it. It's still fun to watch them win.
I was very excited. Hey Pete, while I'm talking, while I'm going to bring up Jason, if you could bring us some comment speed for us on the
Yeah,
we
definitely.
a lot of people joining us. If you are, whether you're new to the show or not, please join us in the live chat, top right hand side of the screen. Thanks, Chris. I appreciate that. Especially if you are with West Point Thoroughbreds, if you're a partner or have any interest in West Point Thoroughbreds, welcome to the HHH Racing Podcast. As we're going to bring on Jason Blewett here in just a moment. We want to hear all about your comments and your opinions and everything. All right, guys. Hey, Lon, how we doing? Thanks a lot, everyone, joining the show. All right, Pete, we are good. Charles, thank you very much. I appreciate that. All right, guys, let's bring on our guest tonight. This is a gentleman that I've been a big fan of for a long time. I first saw him, I think, on probably watching NYRA and Talking Horses with Andy Serling and Eric Donovan and the boys there. I had the pleasure to meet him for the first time in person down at Gulfstream, the 2019 Florida Derby, which was won by Maximum Security. I'll tell the story about that because he treated me like a king for no reason other than it's Jason Blewett, and he's a great guy. And then I saw him again recently. I think it was at the Belmont, or maybe it was actually at Saratoga that we hooked up again. Been a big fan. If you're not familiar with this guy, you're going to learn a lot more about him. He is the partner account representative for West Point Thoroughbreds, coming in from Saratoga, still in Saratoga, the one and only Mr. Jason Blewett. Jason, how you doing tonight?
Everything's good, and congratulations, Howard. I did not know, A, you were on the ownership side of things, and B, because I watched today's first race live, that you're in on that filly. She's got a great name, win, lose, or draw. Naturally, I can't help it. I love Goodfellas. I love The Sopranos. So when I saw her debut, just that name in the program a couple of months back at Belmont in the summertime, just a great name. And yeah, she ran well, had a great trip from that outside post. And to be fair, caught a couple of fillies who were off long layoffs, but that doesn't matter, man. That's a nice purse, and New York bred and open company. So great job.
Funny how not to be confused with another great name, Now's You Can't Leave, which is a horse that has run in New York. Another great name. Listen, you know this game very well, Jason. You got to get a little lucky. It was a sort of a weaker open company race. We were actually going to wait for a New York bred race, but the race didn't fill. So Ray Handel decided, let's just go for it. It's a small field. She got a great trip, and it all worked out. And listen, New York bred, as you know well, and Paul works for the Saratoga Special, Jason. We get that extra bonus winning an open company. So the New York bred program is tremendous.
Huge fan of the New York bred program, being a New York bred myself. But I mean, all through my years at NYRA, naturally, and as we've all of us are students of the game and lovers of the game. We've watched that the New York bred program evolve. I mean, even going back to the early 2000s with Funny Side and then Commentator. So no, a job well done. And it's a program I know as far as West Point Thoroughbreds, we support, and we're always looking. We picked up a couple of very nice New York bred yearlings over the summer here in Saratoga. And your filly looks like she could have a big winter, man. That's the kind of horse I'd love to have with those purses at the Big A. She's got speed, and Ray does a great job handle. And who's to say we've seen her best? I think she's still very much an unfinished project there, and a product as well. So
thanks.
Congratulations, and love the New York breds.
Yeah, appreciate it. A lot of credit to Matt Gutierrez, the managing partner, who does a fantastic job with the Delphi Racing and all the crew, and they had some partners out there today. Jason, we have this podcast has grown leaps and bounds in the 20 months it's been on the show. We have over 160,000 views on this show. We've had a lot of fantastic guests like yourself, especially from NYRA with Stabile, Andy Serling, Acacia Courtney, Clement. I could go on and on. But we do have a lot of younger viewers. And I know you're still a pretty young guy, but there might be some people that are not familiar with your background. So very briefly, we're going to talk about 10 minutes about yourself and about West Point Thoroughbreds. Very briefly, give the short version of how you got into racing and especially your New York connections.
Yeah, fair enough. It's crazy. I look back almost 30 years on into, again, loving racing more than anything in life until my last breath on earth. And I just think, how crazy life is, that one seemingly innocuous decision could change your life forever, whether you meet your significant other, whatever the case might be. But going back, my dad, I grew up in Floral Park, New York, which is a town bordering on Belmont Park. And I actually went to junior high and high school at Floral Park Memorial, which is the school located on Plainfield Avenue on the other side of Belmont. It wasn't until the summer going into 10th grade that I had any interest in racing at all. My dad was volunteering for the Floral Park Youth Council. They were sponsoring the Youth Council, a family day at Belmont Park, and summer vacation had just started, and my dad got tickets, and I didn't want to go. And he said, look, Tough, we're spending the day as a family. You, me, your sister, and your mom, you're going. And I can still remember kind of being dragged there. Didn't want to go, but I can really, crystal clear remember walking out onto the apron and just the beauty, the greenery, the expansiveness of Belmont. And that was before I ever saw a single horse. And that day changed my life forever. I wound up writing some local articles for a town newspaper in Floral Park called The Gateway, leading up to the Breeders' Cup at Belmont in 1995. Of course, that was in the midst of the Great Cigar and his winning streak. And that gave me a body of work that I eventually won. It's a shame the organization no longer exists, but I won a scholarship. The New York Turf Riders had a scholarship, $5,000, but most importantly, you got to intern at Saratoga. And I won that scholarship back in 1996, the year I graduated high school. And that summer, prior to starting college, I got to spend pretty much 4 weeks or so, just shy of the whole meet back then, in Saratoga, interning for NYRA in the press box. And boom, it's like fast forward. Here we are. That's how I got my foot in the door. And I've just been, again, as you get older, you look back and you just think about the twists and turns of life, the good and the bad, and just the whole thing. And I've always, from winning that scholarship to talking to you guys on this podcast, I've always had people in my corner willing to give me an opportunity. So I've been very blessed and lucky in that regard. And my career was almost 20 years long at NYRA. Was hired by the Stronach Group. They relocated me and my then girlfriend, now wife, from Long Island down to Fort Lauderdale. I kind of quarterbacked the Gulfstream Park handicapping feed, the daily feed there for GP for almost 4 years, and then was stolen away by the great Terry Finley and Debbie Finley of West Point. And that brings us kind of up to speed in a very Cliff Notes version of the last 30 years or so.
Well, you've been surrounded by some incredible people, and it's all a lot of it because of your hard work, and you deserve all that success. Speaking of Florida, and I should have mentioned this on our Tuesday show, Jason, just on behalf of the HHH Racing Podcast, anyone who hears this, we want to wish everyone a safe recovery. We hope everyone is doing well down in Florida. It was absolutely a horrific hurricane, Jason. I'm sure you've possibly been through them, or you know what that's all about, being down at Gulfstream. This hit the west coast of Florida, I guess Naples and Fort Myers. Jason, I'm sure you have some connections to some people down there. Let's just hope everyone turned out okay, because those hurricanes are nothing to mess with.
No, they're not. Irma was the first hurricane. Now, granted, on Long Island growing up, had experienced a couple of them over the years. I mean, Superstorm Sandy really comes to mind back, what was that? I think 2012. But no, I mean, Christina, my wife, and I, our first fall in Florida was when Irma hit. It was stressful. It was scary. But yeah, we're with everybody. Anyone listening in Florida, racing fans in Florida, West Point partners, we're with you and thinking of everybody for sure.
Absolutely. Let's get into West Point Thoroughbreds. You already mentioned Terry Finley, who I had a pleasure to just want to introduce myself this summer at Belmont and Saratoga, who's the president and CEO. I've got the website up here, Jason. Very quickly, tell everyone what you do with West Point as I bring up the internet here that you guys have. Talk about what you do with West Point and how you got involved with them in the first place.
So I've known Terry Finley. We've been friends a long time, probably close to 20 years. Met Terry years ago at Saratoga, and he's a wonderful, charismatic, really bright guy. So again, we've been close friends. Tom Bellhouse, who's a colleague of mine and coworker now. Tommy's a local guy in Saratoga. Been friends with him. He's one of the greatest guys you'd ever meet in the course of your life. So again, having an existing relationship with West Point, I was not looking, even though I had known Terry and Tommy for a long time and respected the stable and certainly the West Point brand, and with Always Dreaming, they've had a Kentucky Derby winner. I was not looking or thinking about a career change when out of the blue, I got a text. This would have been right around Breeders' Cup time in 2020. It was a Monday or a Tuesday, and I got a text from Terry, and I said to my wife, because we weren't racing those days at Gulfstream, it's a dark day. I said, oh, I just got a text from Terry Finley. He must want to, once the winter meet starts at Gulfstream, maybe he wants to set up, grab dinner after the races one night. And sure enough, he said, call me when you've got a few. I called him and said, look, I've thought long and hard about this, but we've got an open spot. You're the guy. I think, again, I've done a lot of soul searching. I think this will be a position that you'll excel at. And I thought about it because my job, it's sales. Okay. So you've got to produce, we buy horses. West Point buys horses at auction. You then have to sell those horses to existing partners and hopefully new partners. My job, though, sales is part of it. It's really about creating relationships with partners. And I've got a lot of West Point partners now, people I didn't know prior to starting with the company in February of 2021 that are some of my closest friends now. It's a very close-knit stable. And Terry said, look, I think this is a gig you'll excel at. And it's been unbelievable. I thought about it long and hard. It wasn't an immediate yes. My wife and I talked about it for a few weeks. I got advice, talked to my parents. Mike Rapoli's a very good friend of mine. Mike and I had some pretty lengthy conversations. And the question was, do you give up a career and a job that you enjoy, that you're pretty good at? And Gulfstream was great to work for. They took great care of me. And go in, although it's the same industry, kind of go into the great unknown. I've never had to sell anything before, maybe some bad picks on the air. But in terms of like having to produce, that was pretty nerve-wracking. But in the end, I said, at the time I would have been almost 43. It was like, you know what, let's do it. Let's see how it goes. And people ask me all the time, which I'm flattered about, as you might imagine, how's the gig? How's the West Point job going? And I look back and I don't know what expectations I had other than it not wanting to go poorly or not being terrible at the job. But again, the first year and a half I've worked for Terry and Debbie Finley, any expectations I would have had, they've been exceeded probably tenfold, just in terms of the team I work with, my colleagues from Terry and Debbie on down. To the partners fanning out. We have north of 600 partners now. The stable's really big. And just getting to travel and go back to Saratoga for the summer. There's a flexibility with this job. And the bonus, the cherry on top, was starting in February of 2021. And about 8 weeks later, Flightline debuted. So to be able to sit shotgun with this, he's not even a once-in-a-lifetime horse. This great, amazing horse that I get to, ride alongside now. It's hard to put it into words without just getting into cliches, but it's been an awesome year and a half for West Point. It really has.
Well, we're going to talk about Flightline, and so there's other, West Point horses that we need to mention as well. Paul, I'll let you go ahead and ask a question for Jason if you have them, and I'm also going to show, as Paul's asking a question, these are some of the horses. I'm assuming these are some from the September Keeneland sale, I would assume, Jason. And after
Correct.
Paul asks your question, if you'd like to talk about one or two of these horses you guys really like, that'd be great. Paul, do you have a question for Jason?
Yeah, well, just Jason, I imagine what's enjoyable, and I see you in the mornings when I'm at Saratoga, and we cross paths at the Oklahoma and the main track. But I would think that I hear what you're saying. I couldn't sell anything to anyone, but it seems like the primary part of your job is relationships. And sometimes that means selling, but it also means, I see you in the paddock and, you're before a race and you're introducing partners to the jockey. And it's really about relationships, right?
It is. And I've always been, I don't know where it came from. I've always been somebody that not only was pretty positive, but I've also been someone that has always worn their heart on their sleeve, not only with racing, but really any of my passions in life. It's just the way I am. So it's about the relationships, and you want everybody to have a positive experience, whether you've got a fast horse or maybe a horse that's underachieved a little bit. It's a very tough game and not an inexpensive hobby. So, you need to be like, especially, and it's a long summer in Saratoga, you need to be in a good mood. You need to be up. You got to remember, you may be talking to somebody that this is their summertime trip, something they've been dreaming about for the last 12 months. And, maybe you're a little tired or, again, got beat in a tough photo a few races ago. So it's just about treating people well and with respect. And as a whole, I think West Point does that. And it's been a lot of fun. And it's fun to just interact with people, like hanging out with you guys tonight, people that love the game and love racing.
Well, just to piggyback on that, and folks, if you're waiting for our handicap, and we're going to get there in about 5 or 10 minutes here. Again, we're with Jason Blewitt from West Point Thoroughbreds. Let me just piggyback exactly off of what you said, Jason, and tell everyone the first time I met you. Very briefly, I went down to Gulfstream for the first time ever, 2019. I always wanted to meet yourself and Ron Nicoletti, who, of course, does a great job down there. I know you're good friends with him.
Ronnie, yep.
Ronnie, absolutely. Still there. Still working with another good
best
guy, Brian Nadeau, who's been on this show as well. Anyway, I wait for them to be done in the prattle. They talk. I introduce myself to Jason. Literally within 2 minutes of our conversation, after I tell him it's my first time at Gulfstream, and there was a grade 3 that was about to happen, and Shug was in there, and Pletcher, and all big Clement, all big names. And Jason said, "You want to go into the paddock?" And I'm like, "You're kidding, right?" He's like, "No, go ahead in there." There's like no security, which shocked me. But he opened the gate. I had no credentials. He's like, "It's all good." Jason, I want to thank you for that. That was the first time I was actually in the paddock before a race. And Shug McGahee, who I love, was like literally 10 feet from me. It was so awesome. That's the kind of relationship building you're talking about. So I appreciate that, Jason.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you behaving yourself. Okay. And you didn't get kicked by a horse. So that would have been, that would have been a disaster.
And actually, that weekend, here's a great flashback. I don't know how good your memory is. I gave you a horse that weekend that I loved. It was one of the, I can't remember the name of it. It was a long distance race. I gave you Moretti in the mile and a half dirt race that weekend. Went off of 9-2 and won. And after the race, I came back and gave you a little thumbs up. You gave me a thumbs up back. So Moretti won that weekend in 2019, who's like a long distance dirt horse. You remember that horse, Jason?
Of course I do. Sure. Yeah. Absolutely. And that was the last winner you ever gave anybody.
Absolutely. Now you must have me confused with Nicoletti. What are you talking about? Anyway,
Roddy boy. But no, I remember Moretti and remember meeting you, and glad you had a good time. And you're spot on. This is a rundown of the yearling class that we still have a little availability in. We've sold out many horses, which is wonderful, and want to thank West Point partners again for their support. There is no West Point without our partners. There's some heavy hitters on this list. We've got a really good thing naturally going with John Sadler out on the West Coast, and John's getting a couple of these horses. In fact, more than a couple. And the bottom filly, in fact, this Uncle Mo filly, I'll talk about her just briefly. I'm obviously a lover of all things Uncle Mo, given my close friendship with Mike Rapoli over the last 20 years, and got to, again, ride shotgun at all his races with Mike and his family back, which was incredible. But aside from this filly having the same, same pedigree or sire as a horse that I love, this horse is actually out of a dam who's a half-sister to Justify, which I think is pretty incredible. She's by a Harlan's, or out of a Harlan's Holiday mare, in fact. And when you slot in the Uncle Mo, I mean, she is big, she is strong, and she looks powerful as you know what. And she'll go out to John Sadler next spring to train.
Yeah, it's exciting. You guys did a great job at the sales. And the other thing I really wanted to show everyone, there's Sadler there, about the website, I need to actually go back, is you guys on the website, you talk about the horses that have run, which I think is really important. If you keep scrolling down, And again, we're going to move on in just a second. But here are some entries and results. You can see who they recently have run. You've got some horses running this weekend that we're going to talk about, Jason. Anyway, whoever does the website does a fantastic job. And we're going to talk about the big boy here in a second because we're going to talk about the first race of the Pick 5 on Saturday. So hats off to whoever runs the website. Real quick question. Yeah, from Lon. We have questions at the bottom of the screen. How was it putting the partnership together from Lon Garfield? Lon, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, no, thanks for the question, Lon. Now, Flightline, West Point bought him in the summer of 2019, August of 2019, at the Saratoga yearling sale for $1 million. I hadn't started with the company yet. So again, you know, you talk about just needing timing in life. I'm kind of able to just enjoy the spoils of this whole thing when the hard work off the bat was put together. But from
I thought
the
that was
story,
your $1 million that bought that wasn't your million that bought the horse?
no, I would have been a little short. I would have come to you for a loan, in fact.
Oh, no. You come to that guy for a loan right over there, man.
Right. He looks like he's got some dough.
Oh, yeah,
sure,
he's got
Pete.
the goods.
Yep. But no, from the story, and I've heard it more than once, you might imagine. Terry Finley is all things West Point, but also all things Flightline. So it is funny to hear him talk about this great horse that he literally has waited his entire life to have a horse like this. And the ownership group that came together the night of the sale came so quickly and seamlessly, where Jane Lyons, who bred the horse, stayed in and actually named the horse Flightline. He was named when we bought him, and the name certainly fits. Sienna, Woodford, and Ronus Racing, we all work well together. You need to have great partners, and naturally, when you're talking about these big ticket purchases, you want to get along with your partners. So there hasn't been any drama or anything like that. And West Point owns about 20% of Flightline. And it's funny, a lot of the big ticket horses sell out like that. I mean, people that have money and aren't afraid and have the wherewithal to write those big checks, they're willing to take swings, and a dream come true. And there's been, you know, a few guys come to mind. It's a wonderful group of people on the West Point side that own Flightline, but there's a couple of guys in particular that are older gentlemen that have been around a long time, have been long-time West Point partners through thick and thin. So you feel good when someone who's been through the war, bad horses, good horses, what have you, when they buy a horse like this, and they can say, that's my horse, Flightline. It's incredible.
It's unbelievable. We're going to talk about Flightline's performances in just a little bit as we talk about the first race. So, guys, let's get right into the Pick 5, Jason, on Saturday at what I like to call Royal Aqueduct, as I saw Nick Tamero put out on Twitter, who's a great guy, and sort of called it that name, which I thought was pretty funny. But Belmont at Aqueduct. We're going to go ahead, Jason, right now, and I'm going to bring up the entries here. This is the Aquabase entries for the first leg of the Pick 5 on Saturday, with a bunch of Breeders' Cup winning you're in races and preps, of course, for the big races at Keeneland. The first one to kick off the Pick 5 is certainly a race that I know Jason and the West Point people are going to be interested in watching, I'm sure. It's the Woodward. It's always a great race. It's for olders. It's a grade one, $500,000, a prep for the Breeders' Cup Classic. They're going 1.1 miles. There's the field, and the obvious choice here. We don't need to look at the PPs too much here. Life is Good is facing a pretty weak field, with all due respect to the others. 1 to 9, the morning line, Pletcher and Irad. And I'm going to go ahead and also put, you'll see the picks now, Jason, on the bottom of the screen. It'll be a scroll from the four of us here. Just 1 second as I go ahead and do that. And shockingly, we're all going with Life is Good. Jason, I'll let you talk about, there's really not to talk about this race. I think we should just mainly focus on Life is Good, who's going to be a serious competitor with Flightline, assuming that Life is Good, of course, goes to the Classic. Your thoughts, Jason, in general?
He's a wonderful horse. I mean, he really, to have him and Flightline as 4-year-olds in the same crop, in training at the same time, is pretty awesome. I mean, this is a horse that is putting up a first ballot Hall of Fame type resume. And I gotta give credit where credit's due. I liked him in the Pegasus Dirt, in the Pegasus Invitational last January at Gulfstream. I really thought he was going to be vulnerable in the Whitney. I mean, going going 9 at Gulfstream and doing a mile and an eighth at Saratoga, two totally different ends of the spectrum. And he beat a significant field. I mean, a field far significant than what he's facing on Saturday, which I'm sure Todd is happy about. You could have this horse probably 60% and be good enough to get the job done. My question, and I'd just be curious, I mean, what do you guys think? Because he's in all likelihood going to win this race. How do you guys feel about him? Let's just say he wins and fires one of his usual good efforts and firing in the 105 to 1.
Up. Jason, you froze up there just a second.
What do you guys think of him moving ahead? Because I gotta think they run in the clack to the dirt mile. What do you guys think of him trying to go 10?
Pete, go ahead. You've been very patient.
What do you guys think about this horse trying to go a mile and a quarter?
I mean,
Pete, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've talked about it on here a bunch of times when he's come up, and we've always had a little bit of our concern because, it just never seemed like it never seemed like he wanted to get that extra furlong. So it just never seemed like it was in the cards. And then, he went to Dubai and he sort of faltered in Dubai. So that sort of raised the concerns even more. I mean, I think in all honesty, the key is going to be, we know he's fast. We know Flightline's fast. So is the fact that they're going to sort of potentially hook up or at least give each other something to worry about on the front end, which they don't generally get in their races, is that going to take the starch out of that final furlong, final half mile or so? So I think it's one of those where you're not really going to know, because this race isn't going to give it to him. You're not really going to know until I think he's head to head with someone who could run on the front end with him. And obviously Flightline's the one who could do that.
Paul?
Yeah, I think, Jason, for the good of the game, we all hope this horse runs off the screen Saturday, so they really have no choice on what to do. I watched Elliott Walden was on the Breeders' Cup cocktails and the Cup show with Brittany and Nick Luck last night. I think if you read between the lines, Elliott, you know him well, I'm sure, Jason, former trainer. He's WinStar is one of the great operations. I'm reading between the lines. I think that they are they want to take a shot at the big boy. That's my guess. And you know what? It would be a sin if this horse runs in the dirt mile. It really would. Let's face it. Okay. I mean, and in this race, Jason, they could have left this horse at Saratoga. You could have watched him work out, but he's going to make $300,000 instead of you watching him at the Oklahoma for nothing. He's going to make $300,000 Saturday afternoon downstate.
Don't tell that to Uriah St. Louis and Informative.
Hey, look, Uriah has pulled off some major upsets. This is not going to be one of them.
No, it's not going to be one of them.
But really, he's 8 for 10 lifetime. He lost in a photo and a sprint to Jackie's Warrior with probably not the greatest trip in the world, ride in the world. And, some horses take to the Dubai trip and some don't. And, he just didn't. I wouldn't be banking on the fade in Dubai. I wouldn't have that be the basis of my thinking he can't get a mile and a quarter. That would be my feeling. Now, look, there's a distinct possibility it doesn't matter with the big boy Flightline in the race, but I think it's WinStar, it's China Horse Club. They've been in a lot of big races, and I think Elliott Walden, the races at Keeneland, Elliott is a Kentucky guy. WinStar is one of the Kentucky farms. I think unless something bad happens Saturday, it's all systems go for the Classic as it should be.
Jason, here's my just quick take and thought. I'm assuming you're going to agree with this statement. I think Life is Good by far would be the horse that would push Flightline the most in his career to this point, because usually we've seen Flightline rate a little bit, but he's just so naturally fast. We saw in the Pacific Classic, Pratt didn't even have to really ask. He just went to the lead without really asking. But Life is Good, and IRAD, assuming it's IRAD, is not just going to let Flightline just blow by him. So my question to you and the team, I'm not going to ask you what kind of tactics you'd put, but would it be slightly concerning if Life is Good, doesn't allow Flightline to go past, and Flightline really hasn't pushed up to the top of the stretch where he's had to fight ever in his life against this kind of horse?
Yeah, I mean, it makes for great conversation and great fodder and great theater going in because I mean, as impressive as Flightline has been, he has not faced a horse like Life is Good. Um, I'm very encouraged with how relaxed though Flightline was in the early
Yes.
stages of the Pacific Classic, and
Yeah.
I just don't see Life is Good being able to turn off the way Flightline is able to turn himself off with that, and he's got that extra large gas tank where he can just keep
Yeah.
striding away and opening up. So again, I hope Life is Good. In fact, he'll probably crush on Saturday and be like 80%. And we'll see. We'll see. Ultimately, that's the way it should be coming up at Keeneland, nonetheless. Horse of
Yeah.
the Year on the line in the BC Classic.
I got to ask you about one more West Point horse, which relates to the Classic, because I've been telling Pete and Paul, my good buddies here on the show, all along that I am fascinated with a horse called First Captain. I'm a big fan of First Captain. I have actually. This is before Flightline went crazy in the Pacific Classic, but I do have I have a future win bet in the Classic on First Captain. I've been a fan of his, Jason, since he was down at Gulfstream, even after he was horrible, I think, in a 7 furlong race. I'm like, this horse wants to go long. He came through for me in the Pimlico Special. How is First Captain doing? And I'm playing in the BC contest at Keeneland. Jason, how about a nice, let's say, smash $2,000 exacta, West Point over West Point, Flightline, First Captain, exacta, boom, in the Classic. How's First Captain doing? Tell me about him.
No, I like the sound of that from your mouth to the racing god's ears. But no, he's doing really well. And the Woodward, in fact, it's not my call. I wanted to run for what it's worth. I mean, just being honest, I thought the Woodward would have been a great spot to run First Captain. The goal with him, the ultimate year-end goal is going to be the Clark. I don't know.
Oh,
I know, and I bet
is
him
he?
too. I was like, dude, I just have to get. He's 70-1 or 75-1.
Yeah.
Because I'm a First Captain lover myself. I mean, I've watched him from this past winter at Gulfstream up through now in Saratoga. I mean, in terms of West Point, I've watched him train more than anybody else has for the company. So believe me, First Captain is near and dear to me. But this year, the older horses are so solid. Not just Life is Good and Flightline, but the Olympiads of the world and Happy Saver and Hot Rod Charlie, et cetera, et cetera. So I think the plan is with First Captain. Shug didn't want to run in the Woodward, or at least in the end opted to go with the Fayette at Keeneland. And I think ultimately that'll be a prep for him for the Clark Handicap around
Wow.
Thanksgiving weekend. Yeah. And hopefully that's
Jason,
the
my
spot he
night
gets
is
his
ruined.
grade one. I'm sorry.
Get Finley on the phone. He's got to change his mind, man. Come on.
Howard, you can call
this
that
this horse can win. What is second place purse? He got $6 million. That's $1.2 million for second in the Classic. Come on, man. Residual value, a little West Point. I'm just kidding, Jason.
Howard, you can call that a no future ticket. A no future ticket.
A no future.
All right.
You
Well,
and me
that's
both,
breaking news to me. We wish First Captain well. I actually thought he ran better than American Revolution in the Woodward, if you really watch it carefully. Anyway, we won't talk about it more. Good luck with First Captain going forward. Maybe next year's Classic.
Dude,
maybe, right?
that's not set in stone. And the plan is with First Captain to bring him back. We're bringing him back next year at 5. I mean, he's healthy and he is just on that like classic older horse Shug type trajectory. So we haven't seen the best of what First Captain can do. So if not a BC Classic is in the cards this year, you can look forward to him in 2023 for sure.
All right. And just to wrap up this race, Jason, you keep me in mind in second. So do I. And so does Pete. This is a Pletcher horse that did not get a very good trip in the Jockey Club Gold Cup. Likes the distance. Should be able to maybe clunk up for a second in this race. Would be logical exacta.
Yeah, I mean, look who he has to run against. Again, with peace and love and all due respect. I mean, the race is a joke outside Life is Good.
Yeah.
So, again, this is a pretty nice racehorse. He's nowhere near the quality of a Life is Good, but I think he's got a class edge on the rest of the field there. What is he? Third time back for Todd there.
Yeah. All right, let's go on to Let's go ahead in the next race, guys. Not much to say there. Race 8 is the Miss Grillo. This is a grade 2 for 2-year-old fillies. They're on the turf, $200,000. You'd think some of these would go to the Breeders' Cup juvenile turf race. The Moorline favorite is the number 6, Be Your Best for Horatio De Paz and Jose Ortiz. And you can see on the bottom screen, Jason is going to go with the Chad Brown, Flavian Pratt second choice, Free Look. What does he like about this horse, Jason?
I liked her maiden win a lot. Now, she had a great trip in that race and tracked a screaming pace. There were a couple of duelers in Free Look's maiden win last time out that just pulled away from the field, and she had a lot go well for her, where the runner-up, in fact, who's returning fairly early, I think it's race 2 on Saturday for Kenny McPeak, Fred something. I can't remember her name. She's kind of got a weird name, but you can watch Chad's horse here just with that quick 3 to 4 wide sweep. The horse in the red, though, that just got stuck down inside, she finishes a good second. And what is that? Freddy's the red. She's coming back in Saturday's second, and I think she'll run well. But just this explosive turn of foot. No one campaigns a horse, especially these young fillies on the grass like Chad. And I like her to get the job done as she steps up and faces a very worthy foe. I'll let one of you guys take it away with the outside posted horse, who's a perfect 2 for 2 and Be Your Best, and was very professional last time out, I thought, just skimming the rail in the PG Johnson.
Yeah, Pete, your thoughts on I'll go ahead and watch the stretch run here of Be Your Best.
No, and actually Jason said exactly what it was. I kind of like the fact that this horse was a little bit in tight, and then still, for a horse who's only in their second start, sometimes you would think that would maybe spook a young horse, but that one sort of waited, was patient, or the jock was patient, but the horse actually was, the horse had the ability and the quickness to sort of hit that hole and sort of explode up the rail once the hole opened up. And then I just liked the way she sort of kicked away. And so she never really got that full momentum that maybe you would get if you had a clearer run, and she still pulls away by whatever it turns out to be, 3 and change. So I just really like that. And then the first race was just as good, beat the Chad Brown horse, but the Chad Brown horse, Free Look, had a much more difficult trip, was way back. So I'm not sure if that's truly indicative of the difference between the two. But I think this is just sort of a toss-up race between those two, and you just land on one. I wound up landing on the 6. Jason, you landed on the 2. So I think it's about a 50-50 shot at this point.
Yeah, it feels a little bit of a jump ball perhaps between those two, but there's no doubt about it. That filly on the outside was really good last time out. And then we have the 4, Alluring Angel. I mean, what's the story with her stretching out in distance?
Yeah, Paul Jason does not think this is a jump ball. He's going with a little price with Alluring Angel, who is by Fastnet Rock. So what do you like about this horse for Lascano and Jorge Abreu, Paul, who's I think it's still an underrated trainer?
Yeah, I happen to be there. This horse ran, the 4th was the Thursday or Friday of Whitney week, I believe. As a matter of fact, I think if I go to my desk, I think I'm in this win picture, because I've done a lot with, I have to go get it. I've done a lot with Larry Goichman, who does a lot with New York Breds. And I went down to congratulate him after that race. And I gotta give me 2 seconds, because I think I have the win picture.
All right. Well, I'll talk real quick. I actually think the 3 is a little bit interesting, Jason. I'm not going to show the replay, but Pleasant Passage. First of all, Shug does not win a lot first time out, especially going long.
No.
She ran very well, sort of in between horses. Got a little bit, came up the rail, got the lead, and it looked like someone was going to come over the top of her. But then Pleasant Passage fought back. Again, you got to watch the replay. It was really impressive. And this horse, Jason, galloped out like an absolute train. So I don't know if Pleasant Passage is going to be better maybe as she goes longer and maybe next year. But this is a horse that's 8-1 morning line with IRAD and Shug and only a second-time starter. This 3 Pleasant Passage, guys, is very interesting to me. Paul, I'll let you finish about number 4.
Yeah, it was La Chase is the win picture I have. Larry had a great weekend that weekend. But,
all right,
this horse did come from, the numbers are a little lighter than the other 2 horses you folks had talked about. But he did come from way behind. Kentucky Downs, he also got way behind. And Kentucky Downs this year,
it's a she, by the way, Paul. Just want you to know it's a she.
Oh, there's the fine. Yes,
There,
we have
he
the
gets a
fine.
fine, Jason, because we have issues
Yeah.
with calling the horse the wrong
Put it in the
sex.
jar. In the
That is
jar.
And none of us
put
are
money in the
perfect.
swear jar, Paul. That's
Yeah.
$5
That-
in the swear jar.
Oh,
that
God, I'll be
drives me
broke.
bananas calling,
Yeah.
Phillies, Colts, and vice
Oh.
versa. And every now and then I'll slip up too, and I just want to hit myself in the head so
Yeah.
hard. So I like
Jason,
the swear jar.
Jason, I know you've got a partner that does the same damn thing like every day, I'm sure, out there. Anyway, go ahead, Paul.
Yeah. So what I was saying is this year, I think Kentucky Downs wasn't the typical, horses coming from, way, way, way behind over the hill and et cetera. So I just think the horse is going to be a little bit pace dependent, and certainly on paper, it doesn't look that fast, and that could be a problem. But I do think the horse will be running late. I think she improved off her first start. I think she will jump up again. I don't know what it's going to take to win this race. Is it going to be low 80s? You would have to think, right? Based on that, she's got a 70. So I'm going to go with my guy Larry here, he's had very good luck buying Fastnet Rocks, and I think she has a more than a puncher's chance at a good number.
Okay.
I think too, Paul, she had some, or she has, I think it's some, relatives along the bloodline who have some graded stakes turf route wins in there. So at least it sort of gives a good indication that maybe this one can enjoy the stretch out and actually has some pedigree behind her as well.
All right, guys, let's talk about another one of the races that I think is completely wide open. And Paul and Pete, I'm not a big fan of turf sprints, but this is another example of a race that's just, to me, absolutely impossible. It's the Belmont Turf Sprint. It's a grade 3, 200,000, 3-year-olds and up, 6 furlongs. It's a big field. It's a wide open field. How do you know that? Because the morning line favorite is the number 2, Arzak, at 4-1, who's coming off a pretty shaky performance for Trombetta and IRAD. And Jason, you can see on the bottom of the screen, we are going in actually somewhat similar directions considering the field here. You're going to go with the 10, of course, the New York bred, Dancing Buck for Michelle Nevin and Franco. Go ahead.
Yeah, in picking Dancing Buck, I actually picked against a West Point horse, so I just don't want to put too much weight on Voodoo Zip. All right. So Voodoo Zip's the 6. We'll talk about him in a second. But look, first and foremost, this race is insane. This strikes me as the kind of race that you could run it 10 times and have 8 or 9 different winners. It is a race that, I think more than ability. Obviously you're going to hope and want your horse to bring their A game, but racing luck and just getting the right trip and having things go your way probably is a bigger angle than any other angle you could possibly, or metric you could come up with. I was just really impressed with Dancing Buck's sprint form. It's remarkable how good this horse has gotten in a short amount of time, and he's one of, again, the first 4 finishers coming out of the Lucky Coin. And I didn't think he had a great cakewalk of a trip, like pretty much chasing the pace 3 to 4 wide, and just gets, this photo is insane. And Voodoo Zip, in fact, in the black cap, he dove down inside. And I remember, and we'll talk about a few of these horses coming out of the Lucky Coin, but I remember Joel Rosario, it had rained a couple days before this race, or maybe the day before, and Joel felt, as everyone kind of drifted off the rail, he felt the inside pass were way deeper and ultimately may have caused Voodoo Zip the win because his run flattened out when he went inside in like a stride and a half. But he's got his work cut out for him. All 4 of those horses that completed the Super, they're turf sprinting hard hitters, and the majority of this field pretty sharp right now as far as overall form goes.
Well, you mentioned Voodoo Zip, and you know what? That takes some guts, Jason, to go against your West Point boy. But that's what we love about you, because you're an honest guy. You're going to keep it straight to people. You're not going to BS people and tell something that they shouldn't be hearing. I've met the Clements several times with my connection with the Delphi, because they train some of our horses, and they do a tremendous job. Miguel, who's the son of Christoph, and the whole crew is fantastic. He's second off a layup. There's no reason why he can't improve. All he's got to do is run back to his previous 2. The mid-90s or even a low 90s might get the job done here.
Yeah, we'll see. If he gets a good trip, the thing with him is Joel knows him better than anybody, and I think rides him better than anybody. this horse goes by the beat of his own drum.
Yeah.
And the best thing to do is just, leave him alone, let him drop back, and he'll come with that run. He's as honest as the day is long. We'll see how he does matching up against these horses. Do I think he's run incredibly, outstandingly well in his 2 stakes attempts so far, and that concerns me a little bit? No, I mean, I think he's run okay, but he hasn't been anywhere near as dominant as he was in those allowance races. So that's my concern with him. If he doesn't stack up, he's like right behind. But I'm a big Voodoo Zip fan, and he's trained well, and no reason to think he won't run his race here in what is just a wild, wide open race on the Aqueduct card.
Paul, I'm going to let you talk next. And the other thing I like about this horse, Jason, and I feel the same way about Voodoo Zip as I feel about the number 2 Arzak. Voodoo Zip's going to appreciate the 6 furlongs. I don't think he's a 5.5. And those really sharp turns at Saratoga, I don't think suit Voodoo Zip or Arzak. I know Arzak is coming from how many turns, Paul, at Kentucky Downs? Is it 8? You said going 6 furlongs.
No,
But,
I think in the sprints it's only 3. I think.
Okay.
Actually,
What do you like about
it's
Arzak, Paul?
It's
What
actually
do you
a
like about
mile and 5
Arzak,
minutes.
Paul?
Well, Jason brought up the fact there's 4 horses coming out of the Lucky Coin, so you got to make a decision, right? Because they're all pretty much right there, right? I ended up going away from that race. I do like Voodoo Zip. He was 3rd on my ticket. I was almost picking Dancing Buck, and then I said, I'm going away from the Lucky Coin. I'm going to take one of the horses out of the other races. So let's look at Arzak. If you go 2 back, he's 3/4 off Golden Pal, who may or may not still be the fastest turf sprinter. I kind of think he's going to get beat in the Breeders' Cup, but I'll be in the minority on that. But having said that, in a grade 3 at Saratoga, he's pretty damn imposing. Again, we're back to the Kentucky Downs thing. It sounds like I'm making excuses, but he just did not. He was on the pace early and just didn't fire. I think he gets a much better trip today. I do agree, Howard. I think 6 is the right distance as opposed to 5.5. And I'm hoping he can overcome all 4 coming out of that Lucky Coin. But I will be using Dancing Buck as an A, and Voodoo Zip is going to be a game time decision. If he's not an A for me, he's a B plus.
All right, very quickly, Pete, because we're not running short on time. I don't want to take too much time from Jason. We still have 2 other races to talk about. How about some love for the New York Reds Scuttlebuzz, who, Pete, I almost put this horse on top. I think his form is completely dirtied up. I don't like the 12 hole, and Rudy's been a bit cold, but there's a lot of things I like about the 12, Pete, personally.
Yeah, no, I agree. And although I should say to Jason, I should probably take your job at West Point now, because I'm the only one who put the 6 on top out of us. So we should probably switch. I'm the only loyal one. But no, I just want, if it's Scuttlebuzz, a couple easy things are 4 for 4 at Aqueduct, 6 for 9 wins at the distance, 8 out of 9 in the top 2 at the distance. Yeah, I do think it is muddied up. You go 2 back, that was at a mile. That race was at a mile and just sort of was way in the back and pretty much had no chance. Then you go back to the Jaipur, which is just a much better field than anyone in here. I think this is a really competitive field, a lot of good horses, but there's no great horses. They're all pretty even across the board. So I just think this one maybe hasn't run his best yet in 2022, aside from that initial race back in April. But I think if he can get back to that against a field that I think he's more suited to his probably talent level, then I think he does have a good shot. Again, the 12 hole isn't the best, but I think that's sort of baked into the fact that we're getting a 10-1 price. Plus, Howard, you know me, it's a gray closer, so I can't leave a gray closer off my ticket. That's just sacrilege.
Yeah, Jason, I just think he's really dirtied up, and he's going to be a price. Any quick thoughts on Scuttlebuzz? Then we'll move on, Jason.
No, I think Pete summed it up perfectly. There's no doubt this horse is dirtied up. I think my concern is just Rudy being so cold, but you're being compensated in a wide open race with a horse who's going to be a nice price. So no knock on Scuttlebuzz, because prior to him trying a mile, going down to Parks on the dirt, he had run some pretty solid races for sure. Some good points there.
Well, I was about 9 deep when I first went through this race, so it's not like I had him as strong as anybody. I see, by the way, Howard Kyle's in the chat. This is another one of the Smoke and Jay invitationals. So our contributor Kyle Roscoe to the podcast, Jason, he's got a piece of Smoke and Jay who is all over the past races of a lot of these horses. So we always give him a shout out when we're looking at the turf sprints.
All right, guys, here's another win and you're in. This is one of my favorite races of the year, to be very honest. It's a fantastic race. It's babies stretching out to a mile. It's the Champagne. It's, of course, a grade 1. It is a qualifier winner in for the Breeders' Cup. $500,000 for these 2-year-olds. It's a small field this year. It's a field of 6, with the Moorline favorite being a horse that just broke his maiden, really impressively verifying for Cox and Rosario. Jason, you're going to stick to your guns here and go with a horse that was disappointing last time, but I think you believe that Asmussen and Jose Ortiz are going to get this horse in the right position and run a big race. Gulfport for those connections.
Getting in the right position, I think, is a good phrasing or even segue into why I picked him. And it's not a super strong selection or pick on my part, because the race came up, as you guys can attest to, very difficult. In the end, though, I was just like, I think he's going to get a good trip from out there. There's so much speed down inside, and Jose should be able to just stalk out there. And maybe this horse didn't, although in terms of a figure on Bayer anyway, it was his second fastest race ever. Maybe this horse didn't like the sloppy track, just the way he was getting out right above the quarter pole and the hopeful. The outside post won me over with a horse that I would like to see just settle a little bit, stalk, and then try to just grind everybody down. I think he'll like going a mile of this colt by Uncle Mo. I'll take Gulfport, but a very difficult Champagne. It's a really hard race.
Jason, there's other speed in this race, and first of all, I would never bet Gulfport 2-1. I don't know how you feel about that, but there's a lot of other speed in this race. We still don't know if Gulfport can really sit and finish. I mean, he did stalk and win in his maiden, and then he finished second at the Saratoga Special, but there's a part of me feels like there's going to be a lot of speed in this race, and even though he's got an outside post, Jason, he still's going to have to pass a bunch of horses potentially, unless you think Asmussen's just going to tell Jose to send at all costs and just wire the field. What would you tell Jose to do if you own Gulfport here?
I would say just let him settle from out there. Just get him into a good groove, and wherever you are. I mean, he's naturally fast. He's not going to be closing from 5th or 6th, but just let him get into a nice rhythm, and that post can afford him the opportunity to just do it from the outside. And maybe he's a horse that'll prefer not having to be, although he's naturally quick, really scrubbed on, and he can just settle. And we'll see how he does against Verifying, who obviously cost a lot and was tipped out on Travers Day and ran like a good thing at 3-5. And I'll turn it over to you guys. I know Brad Cox likes this horse a lot, but this horse was also a little immature going into this first race at the Spa.
Go ahead, Paul, because you were probably assuming, I don't know if you were there for that, Paul, but.
Yeah, I was here, and, again, it's no surprise when a top trainer, you could see him veering in there, unleashes what they think is a really good horse on Travers Day. You'll see the stretch here. He's going to ease away, but this is not right reminding anyone of Favorite Trick as a 2-year-old. But I'd be honest with you. I picked this horse third because there's only 6, but I don't really want much part of this horse on the win end in this race, to be very honest with you. He could be really good, but he's going to beat me. I went with the 1. My New York bred bias is coming through, but I got to tell you, I thought his Sanford was not too bad. Now, we don't know how good Mo Strike is or isn't, but this horse put up an 80 last time, and Gulfport, who's going to be the favorite, put up an 86. So he's right there. This horse sat a half a length off a 21-1 pace last time. So even though he wasn't on the lead, he was third. He was only a half length. They were flying in that race, and he went by. Look, it was a state bred stakes race, an ungraded race. I get it. But if you just visually watch, he went by pretty easily. Of course, he's a brother of Firenze Fire, who they took a similar tack with. They went to the Derby with Firenze Fire, and that they've had this race on the schedule. They were gonna, if the funny side didn't fill, they had nominated to the hopeful, so they were ready to run in the hopeful on closing day. So they're not afraid to take a shot. The funny side was a $200,000 race that he's going to be 4 to 5, 3 to 5 in. But again, does he have to step up to beat a few of these horses? Yes, but verifying first time against winners, Gulfport, no tangible excuse for either of the last two races. I'm not so sure how good Forte is. He could be really good, but he'll have to prove it to me. Blazing Sevens was beaten 12. Howard, your horse, he was beaten 12 lengths in that race. I don't know how good the hopeful was, so I'm going with the Mr. Ramori stable.
All right, Pete. With all due respect, I'm just going to talk about the 5, and I'll let you talk about the last race first because we got to move on. This 5, Jason. There's a horse that won today called Unbridled Bomber at 18 to 1, and he looked really slow, but there was a lot of speed in that race. He looked like the only closer. And I know you've been handicapping a long time. Sometimes these kind of like slower horses get the job done because of the setup. I don't know how good Blazing Sevens is, but he seems to be one of the few horses in here, Jason, that could sit off and finish. And like you mentioned about Gulfport, maybe he just didn't handle the slop. I mean, these are babies. This is Chad Brown and Flavian at a price in a grade 1. I mean, I'll be happy to take a price on Blazing Sevens. And if he doesn't run well, okay. He's by Good Magic out of a Warriors Reward mare. Any quick thoughts on Blazing Sevens, Jason? We'll get to the last race.
No, I think it's a good point just in terms of distance, also pace scenario and what will likely be a searing pace combined with all of these horses having to go what'll be, I would have to imagine, is a pretty demanding 1-turn mile. Sometimes you get a little chaos there, and maybe just being in the right place at the right time for Blazing Sevens will help them out there. We'll see. I'm curious, Pete. I know we got to get on to the last. What's your 2 cents on Gulfport there?
Yeah, I thought I really liked the first 2. The last 2, I mean, like I guess in the last one, I think you sort of referred to it where sort of blew the turn a little bit and sort of lost some momentum there. Didn't like that. I don't know if that was green. I don't know if that was the slop. And then 2 back was sort of checked and didn't have the best trip, but also didn't, like Howard said, didn't finish well. The one thing I don't like is that he's on his 4th jockey now. So you sort of like when a jockey gets to know the horse a little bit. And like you were saying, I'd like this horse to relax maybe and maybe sit off and let the race flow dictate. But maybe because no one ever rides this horse twice in a row since the first 2, that doesn't get a chance to happen because they're not really as familiar with how this horse runs or how it wants to run. So that's a concern. But I just like I don't know. I think this is one where I'm hoping that I think this horse has a lot more in him than he showed in his last 2. And I'm hoping if he gets the right trip and he gets the right ride, then and he sort of settles some of that greenness, then that'll come out here. And I'd like to get that. Let's get that price to float up a little bit over 2 to 1 would be nice too.
Yeah, 3 to 1, 3 to 1ish feels.
I'll take that.
3.5. Yeah.
On Gulfport, you are not getting. You guys, come on, Jason. Have you been to the potting glass before you came on the air, Jason? Come on.
No, I'm stone cold sober. So who's going to be favored? Is Gulfport favored or is it the Justify for Cox? Who goes off the favorite here?
I would think the 3. I think verifying
it's going to be close. Yeah, maybe because people love the ones and he's 1 for 1, but I think it's going to be close. So what is verifying? 8 to 5 and Gulfport 2 to 1. Right. I don't think you're going to get over 2 to 1 on him.
Again, I might want to bet Gulfport at like 2 to 1, 5 to 2, but I'll take it in my pick 5, which is a little bit different. Yeah, a win bet as opposed to the pick 5 is the. And by the way, Paul, I mocked Howard for not giving love to the Italians, and I leave the 1 horse off my top 3. I didn't know if you noticed that for our Italian brethren. I know.
Thank God. And I'm
felt
half
bad.
Italian with an Irish name.
I felt bad, but I have to do what I got to do sometimes.
By the way, that is completely false, Jason. I have no idea where they're talking. I love the Italians. I have no idea where that came from. I'll just answer your question, Jason. I think verifying is going to get really bet hard. I think it's going to be like 6-5. It's Cox, it's Rosario. He just won big. He's got great works. People are down on Gulfport. I think verifying is 6-5. I'm not saying he should be. I'm not saying he's going to win. I just think he's 6-5. And the last thing I'll say on Blazing Sevens, don't you think Chad would pick a different spot if he wasn't confident with this horse? I mean, Chad's not the kind of guy that wants to embarrass himself. I
Sure.
think he knows this horse has talent, Jason, and he knows it's a small field. I don't think he's just like taking a shot. I think he really likes this horse and he's just tossing out the slop effort. So anyway, that's my 2 cents on Blazing Sevens there. Let's go to last race, guys, which is really difficult. Just take about 2 minutes, Jason, and then we'll talk about your pick 5 and what you go for the night. We appreciate you being on the show. The last race is really tough, I thought. It's an allowance race, 6 furlongs, New York breds, fillies, 3-year-olds and up, $85,000 the purse on the dirt. The favorite is the number 3, Can't Hurry Love for Clement and Franco. And Jason and myself and Paul are all going with the 8, Rebo's Valentine, for the aforementioned Ray Handel and Dylan Davis. Go ahead, Jason.
Well, we started the show with Ray Handel and a win with
Yep.
Funny How, and here's to Ray winning the nightcap on Saturday on Woodward Day at the Big A with Rebo's Valentine. This is a pretty hungry group, even for the level with this state bred A other than, and I found it a race where I didn't love anybody, but that said, I thought it was tough to get cute with some of the bigger priced horses. And off that, it's a simple case of me going, okay, this filly comparable to what she's facing has some ability. She's well posted. And what won me over in the end was just her second off the layoff. I'm just hoping she takes a step forward and just found the right spot. This is a pretty, even for the New York bred restricted condition, this is a pretty soft field.
And there's a lot of speed in this race. I mean, this is a cluster. And I Can't Hurry Love, I suppose, will be the favorite. And she's also second off the layoff for Clement. Jason, this is like a pure one-number horse. I mean, she could explode to a mid-80s, or she could finish in 6. I mean, I have no idea what this horse is going to do, to be very honest.
She's a good fit. I mean, no, she stacks up very favorably, even kind of putting your thumb over that last race. Like her maiden races were respectable for the most part, but it's like, which one of these doesn't belong? And you go, wow, where did that last race come from? And then naturally you look, it was a sloppy sealed track. So this is going to be, put up or shut up time for Can't Hurry Love. Has she just turned the corner late in her 3-year-old season, or is she just a bad favorite here off what could be a number that is just not going to be predictive for her next start here against winners?
I agree. Pete, real quick, talk about the 7. I'll talk about the 5, and then we'll get Jason's pick 5 and wrap up his portion of the show. What do you like about the 7, Pete?
I didn't love any horses here, but if I look at the 7, the one thing I did like, since she's moved to the Lucas barn, she hasn't been as good. But the one thing I did like is those were at 5.5 and 4.5. At the 6 furlong, still actually ran a pretty good race.
Yeah,
so it wasn't really. So it was a little short, maybe a little too short for her. But then if you look back when Wayne Potts was training her and she was at Aqueduct, she's firing mid 80 buyers or upper 70s, 80, 85 buyers. That towers over the rest of them in this field. So if this horse can get back to that. I mean, 1 for 10 at the distance, 3 for 14 lifetime isn't exactly screaming confidence, but I do like the 5 out of 7 in the money at Aqueduct. So maybe just has an affinity for this track, and getting back on this track is going to bring back that prior form, and getting that horse at 6-1 in a field that I think is crazy wide open. I'll take it every time.
Pete, you're almost forcing me to make an inappropriate Wayne Potts comment, but I'm not gonna go there, and I'm not gonna ask Jason to go there either. I'm not even gonna go.
I know what you mean, but yes, all right. We'll leave it alone.
I'm sure those figs were because of Aqueduct. I'm sure.
Yeah, I know. Well, maybe you could ship. Maybe you could ship some over. Maybe you could ship some over. We could. Maybe it's just waiting in her stall. I'll take it. It could be accidentally in the stall.
Scratch Wayne Potts off as a guest on this. All right. Anyway, guys, quickly, Captain's Daughter is exactly the situation in the last race with Blazing Sevens, Jason. This is a horse in general I would hate. 1 for 16, looks blah. But you know what? Has got one of the better late time form U.S. pace figs. There's a lot of speed in this race. There's horses like Can't Hurry Love, Jason, that if they don't get the lead, who knows what's going to happen. I'm not saying Captain's Daughter can win, guys, but this is a fascinating horse for me underneath, at least, to fill out your exactas, your tries, your supers. Number 5. And I love turnbacks, Jason, also. So in a race that's completely wide open, I do like the 8. I'm throwing in the 5 in for a second. Jason, let's quickly look at your pick 5, and then we'll let you go here. We talk a lot about ticket construction. I'll let you take as much time as you want because we've already gone over. We're good with our time, but I always feel bad when we take up your time. Let me take this off the screen here. Sorry about that. There we go. Talk as much as you want about your pick 5. Let me read it, Jason, because we do have a listening platform. People can't see this if they listen to it later. Jason's pick 5 is 1 with 2, 6, with 1, 2, 6, 10, 11, with 1, 3, 6, with 2, 3, 8. I mean, the obvious single with Life is Good. I mean, I want people to play the pick 5, but maybe just play a pick 4. I mean, we always tout pick 5s on the show, but it almost seems silly to play a pick 5 on Saturday.
Yeah, but it'll be interesting. I always feel like even if you have like a monster chalk, and I get this is like on the end of the spectrum as far as like big chalks go and horses that are going to pay 210 with Life is Good, maybe you get a few extra bucks for playing the pick 5. I didn't have any sort of earth-shattering sort of opinions regarding just putting a ticket together. It was a little, what does Matthew say here? Gulfport's Thoroughbred figures tower over this field, but these are 2-year-olds and lightly raced horses can really improve. Yeah, no, well said there, Matt. Look, I singled Life is Good. I took the 2 chalks, Chad's horse and the Paz filly and the Miss Grillo. I wanted a lot of coverage in the Belmont Aqueduct Turf Sprint. I went bananas there. I'm 3 deep in the second to last leg. The one race that concerns me about this, I might be a little, if the Clement horse is a bit of a phony, Can't Hurry Love in the last race, the Ray Handel horse doesn't move forward like 3 of us expect.
Brooklyn Heights for the home.
I was looking and I'm like, you know what? I this is a barn. I don't know if you could ever catch in your wildest dreams, like be like, yeah, I cashed a ticket on a Uriah St. Louis trained horse. But, you know, looking at the fact she's a New York bred, she's been running against opens at parks, her figures are okay. Again, if the Clement filly is a bit of a bust and the Ray Handel filly doesn't step forward like I'm hoping, that last race has a number of similarities to the turf sprint stake where it could really turn into just sort of a random, almost pulling a slot machine handle. So I'm belaboring the point. I'm a little light on the last leg, but the rest of the ticket is pretty obvious in my book as to why I use those horses.
If Informative and Brooklyn Heights win in this pick 5, we're talking 5-digit score. It's got to be. Jason Blewett, we really appreciate you being on the show, man. You were awesome. You're a great guy. We wish you great success with West Point Thoroughbreds and your family and everyone else. Anything else you'd like to, let me take your banner off here. Anything else you'd like to say to the partners or anyone, or the bettors or anyone listening about Saturday at Aqueduct or just anything in general?
Well, I will be. In fact, tomorrow morning I am getting on the road. We have got Parnack running in classic colors on the Friday card at the Big A. Both of them have trained well. If I had to pick of the two, I like Parnack a little bit better than Classic Colors. I think this French-bred Parnack, we bought her right around Christmas time privately. She was among, and depending upon who you talk to, was Germany's top-rated 2-year-old filly last year on the grass. We bought her. We've had some minor hiccups along the way, but her race in the Travers Day finale was excellent with a difficult trip. I'm going to be really bummed that Parnack does not run the best race of her life in the States. And that Army Mule firster we have on Saturday, Mount Up, had trained, I think, from the vibe I was getting from Todd and Todd Pletcher and Byron Hughes, his Belmont assistant, throughout August. His last 2 works from the gate, though, much improved. And I think Mount Up will give a good account of himself on Saturday.
An Army Mule won today, I think, for Pletcher, if I recall. And I singled Parnack, by the way, that day. And I like that horse. She got a rough trip. Anyway, I don't want to get into it.
She's a good filly, man.
Battle of Normandy on Sunday. Real quick about this horse, which is a Breeders' Cup winning urine, I believe, the Pilgrim.
Yes, a big field. And again, I say this lovingly. There's a lot of horses on paper that are a little tough to make in my mind. So I'm hoping he just gets a good trip. But he's another one. And you guys are obviously hardcore handicappers and students of the game. Go back and look at his race in the With Anticipation. He was very unlucky not to win, but he's trained great for Shug. And look, you got to be Chad's horse in that race. But between Parnack and Battle of Normandy, if neither one of them runs well, I'm going to be driving back up the Taconic Sunday night with my head spinning. But we're emptying out the barn this weekend at Aqueduct, and it was a pleasure joining you guys here and everybody listening on the podcast. And just long live horse racing. I want the game to thrive. We want safe racing. I want the game to be on firm ground where everybody is happy and everybody's got a fighting chance.
We agree. You'll be at the Breeders' Cup, correct, Jason?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, got my tickets. And, see you at Keeneland. If you're at the Big A this weekend, I'll be downstate. Stop by, say hi, and I look forward to seeing you guys again soon, for sure.
Hey, hopefully we'll see you at the I'll be in the BCBC, and I'll find a way to buy you a beverage, a bourbon, or something. We'll figure it out. Thanks, Jason. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Thanks,
bye,
Jason.
guys. Thanks so much. Man. All right. See you guys.
Bye-bye.
See you.
All right, Jason Blewett from West Point Thoroughbreds. Great guy. Really appreciate all the time he spent. Real quickly, guys, let's go to our pick fives. Paul, let's go to yours first, Paul. You've got one with 2, 4, 6. With 2, 6, 7, 10, 12, with 1, 6, with 3, 7, 8. Shockingly under $50, a $45 ticket.
I know. I'm disappointed. Pete, I'm disappointed.
I'm surprised you just didn't add one. I'm surprised you didn't add one just for fun, Paul. Just to throw anybody on.
When you go 5 deep in a leg and 2 deep in another leg, it tends to land it on a 5 or a 10. But, yeah, look, I hear what you're saying, Howard. The inclination with a horse like Life is Good is you want to beat him because then you really can get paid in a multi-race sequence. I just don't know where you would go in this race. Now, you could say, well, he's off, 9 weeks? Is it 8 weeks, 7 weeks, whatever. Did they need to win this race? No, but I do think they want this horse to tell them he's ready to go to the Classic and take on Flightline. So I wasn't going to try to get smart there because when I try to get smart, I get stupid. The next races I went 3 out of 6. I think, right, Howard? I think I went with
you went
2.
2. You went the 2 and the 6 were the logicals, and the 4 was that sprinter you liked a little bit.
I like Larry Goichman's horse, right? Yeah. And then I'm right with the crew on that 9th race, Howard. I went 5 deep, and I could have kept going, right? That's the race. That's the race in a sequence like this with Life is Good, where if you go 5 deep and get a 2-to-1 shot, you just want to jump off a bridge somewhere because you really, in this sequence, if you want to get paid at all, you need at least a decent price in that 3rd leg. And then in the 4th leg, I was 3 deep, but in the interest of getting the ticket under $50 for Uncle Cheapo, I cut one out, and I cut out, actually, I cut out Verifying. How's that? Because I figured, well, if you get Verifying and Life is Good, so I said, if I'm going to have to cut one out, if those 2 win, it probably isn't paying. And then the last race, I believe I have the logicals, 3, 7, 8. I don't really love the 3 on the win end, but to Jason's point, it's not really that strong a field. And if I'm 4 for 4, I don't really want to get beat by him.
I agree with you there. Pete, your pick 5. Nice and cheap for Pete this week. He's going 1 with 6, with 6, 7, 9, 10, 12, with 2, 3, 4, 6. With 3, 7, 8, $30. Nice and easy there. Starting with 2 singles, Pete.
Yeah, I mean, Life is Good is an obvious single. I don't think we need to say much about that. In the 2nd leg on this ticket, I just didn't want to put the Chad horse Free Look and the 6 Be Your Best. I didn't want to put them both on, so I went with the one that I like a little bit better, the 6. So I went with the single there to try and cheapen this ticket because I agree with Paul. Depending on what happens in these last few legs, this can get cheap real quick to pay out. So Again, I went super deep. And then if we looked at like an ABC grid, I think almost every horse in the third leg is going to be on it except for maybe two. Fourth leg, I did something I probably don't really want to do, is I included sort of verifying and Gulfport. So basically the first four choices, which isn't the smartest thing, but I sort of think it's a little bit wide open. And then that last leg, I don't know. The last leg was a toss-up. I do like that. I don't know. I like the 3, 7, and 8 best, but that's with almost no confidence at all. I wouldn't have minded going a little bit deeper there. If I wanted to bump this ticket up, it would probably be to add a couple more in that last leg.
Yeah. Here's my pick 5. Is Howard singing Life is Good, or is he going to try to get stupid in that race? Let's see. No, come on, guys.
Yeah.
Seriously. My pick 5 is going to be 1 with 2, 6, with 2, 6, 7, 10, 11, 12, with 3, 5, with 3, 5, 6, 8. It's $48. Look, guys, I want everyone to play pick 5s. I mean, because it's fun. I have to say, I don't know if I'm playing pick 5 Saturday. The pick 4 seems a lot like a much more logical bet to me. I realize I'm going chalk and then chalk in the first 2, but I do have prices in the other legs. I'm going very deep in the sprints. I'm throwing blazing 7s as a possible price shot in the Champagne. And then I've got a possible bomb with the 5, who's that turn back in the last race, which could be anyone if it's not the 3 or possibly the 8. We didn't even talk about the 6 in the last race for Linda Rice, who's not great with longer layoffs, but that's another lightly raced horse. Guys, I have to say that, again, the pick 5 might not be worth playing with Life is Good. I would recommend everyone really playing the pick 4. I think that would be a better bet. And, of course, you have to figure out how many favorites you want to use. I think Pete and Paul laid it out very well. But you know what, guys? How many times have we been this through before to finish out the show? Paul and Pete and myself, we've been doing this a long time. Every time, well, it's going to be chalky. It's going to be chalky. It ends up paying huge. And I'm not saying Life is Good is going to lose, Paul, but maybe something goofy happens in the second race. Maybe you get a bomb in the last race. I mean, even with Life is Good winning, which is basically a glorified pick 4, it still could pay.
Well, and that's why in an ABC format, which I think we all play, you can't play your all A ticket for 50 cents with a Life is Good in there, because you could get back 78 cents. So, I think you got to, if you're going to be right elsewhere, Penn State Scott. Hey, look it. I've never been afraid of peer pressure, Penn State Scott. So yeah,
will that be the last time for Flightline? That's a big question. We don't know.
Well, it's funny, Howard. I mentioned listening to Elliot Walden on the Breeders' Cup Cocktails at the Cup show yesterday, and they asked him obviously about keeping really good horses like that in training, right? Because that's the decision. Because the stud deals are kept. They were asking about what he thought about Flightline, because that's what we're talking about. And he said for a horse like that, the insurance runs about $500,000 or $600,000, which means, in effect, to keep that horse in training, you basically have to win $1 million race to cover the insurance, and then the rest of the year is everything else. And not to mention, what you could be cost in stallion fees, right? Flightline's gonna, what's he gonna open at? 100, 150, who knows? 75, cover 100, 150 mares his first year. So we all hope he stays in training, but those are the type of decisions that they have to make.
Well, you can make that. You can make that $500,000 or in Saudi or Dubai pretty quick.
Well, you could stay in training through March.
Yeah, just through. You don't have to stay.
And Elliot talked. He did, Pete. It's a good point. Elliot talked about that. He said those races are a factor in deciding whether to keep horses in training, because from the Breeders' Cup to Saudi, Pete, is what, 3 months?
Yeah, not
so
bad.
it's not a long layoff.
Yeah. Go ahead, Howard. You were going to say something.
Well, I say Into Mischief, I think, is 150 stud. I believe that's correct.
I think he's high. I think he's up to like 225, but you'd have to check.
Flightline stud fee is going to be. I can't even imagine. Ridiculous. Which guarantees, by the way, nothing.
Correct. It guarantees if you breed to him, Howard, you're going to spend a lot of money.
Yeah. Pete, final thoughts about Saturday.
Well, I think the big thing is life is good, and we want to see. I think from a racing fan perspective, like Paul said earlier, we want to see him run off the screen just so it sets up the big showdown between him and Flightline and whoever else shows up. But we always want to go into the last big race, the last big race of Breeders' Cup weekend with some sort of drama. And if life is good, isn't that great on Saturday? Then that takes a lot of the drama maybe away from the classic, and nobody wants that to happen. So hopefully he runs wild and wins by 12, and we can go into the Breeders' Cup with a little head-to-head talk for once.
Paul, final thoughts?
Howard, I just want to talk about, we talked about Aqueduct today, and congratulations. I just want to talk about a situation that happened. Was your horse in the first race, Howard?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so in the third race today was a New York bred stakes race. It was won by a horse called Jackson Heights, 24-1, a Zilla Racing maiden horse winning a stakes race.
A turf
Obviously,
horse. A turf horse, Paul. A turf horse.
Correct. Obviously, well, you'll feel different when I finish the story.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
Huge thrill. Zilla is similar to a Delphi, a smaller, relatively smaller operation, huge thrill. 30 minutes before that race, in the second race, which is in between your race and that race, Zilla and Blackjack Racing, it's a combined ownership, ran a horse in a $100,000 open maiden special, a horse called Jackson Heights, who ran a good second. Linda Rice had 2 in the race, and Linda Rice, her 2-1 shot won. The Zilla 3-5 shots, Jackson Heights ran second. On the gallop out, Jackson Heights took a bad step, fractured a right front, and had to be euthanized pretty much right away. So if you want a microcosm of this game, and I know Mike very well, and I'm probably going to write about this for our website over the next few days, from the lowest of the low, and then 30 minutes later to winning a stakes race. Not that in any way takes the horror out of what happened, but it's a tough game, and we're all in it for the horses. And I just wanted to bring that up because I just think it so perfectly illuminates that in this game, it's a roller coaster, right? It's not for the faint of heart. So, but and I know, Mike, I have a very, very small piece of a few horses. The Zilla people are great people, like the Adelphi people, like the West Point people, and certainly our hearts go out. And actually, Howard, one of my good friends who's a loyal, introduced me to you, Dr. Jeff Mora from South Florida, was a part owner of the Jackson Heights horse. So he actually went through that as an owner today. So that's my. I don't want to end on a down note, but
I didn't know that story, so I didn't mean to make light of anything.
Yeah, no,
I didn't know that story. Obviously,
it's a tough game. It's a tough game.
Very well. Congratulations them for winning the stake race with Orlando Noda again. Just is able to train a horse and surprise.
He ran huge. That horse ran huge for a 24.
I mean, he knocks me out of the pick 5, and on the turn, I'm like, this horse can win. I mean, it was unbelievable.
Howard, you know my son. How do you not put the Jackson in there?
Wait, you didn't even put your own son. What are you talking about?
I didn't play the sequence. I could tell you, I don't know if my dad is watching right now, but Dad, you better have had that $50 horse, and don't give me some crap about, hey, I saw it, but then I forgot to put it in. That's always his excuse. So my pop usually bets all the Jackson horses, so that's a $50 winner he should have had.
I will say this, Pete. Go find the PPs if you can. Maybe I'll take a picture and send. I'll send you the PDF or whatever you can take. If you were able to find this horse in the winner's circle, God bless you, because the horse had 2 semi-okay efforts on turf, a horrible race in the slop. Then they ran. I think is that a girl? Were they girls? I think they were girls. I'm sorry now I'm screwing it up.
Jackson,
anyway,
no, that was a colt.
It was a boy. Okay. Ran the horse on slop, was horrible. I will say one thing, Paul, about that horse that I was upset that I didn't see. He did have a good work, and I really didn't look at. He had one nice work on the dirt that I should have paid more attention to. But anyway, Pete, this horse looks
well. And Jackson
3-5 out. The horse that Linda Rice lost, the Rockets race. There was a 3-5 shot in that race, which is one of the reasons why you had horses drifting up to 25-1.
And Jackson's birthday was on Saturday, so it was all kismet, right, leading right into this. So forget the works, forget the handicapping. Sometimes it's just about just luck. Thanks, Christine. There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. Guys, excuse me. Wrap up the show with what you see on the bottom of the screen. I showed a few things on the banners there. Jim Goodman, he's a great guy. If you guys don't know him, he's going to be with us Tuesday. Perfect timing, right? He's going to take a time out of his very busy schedule next week with Keeneland opening. He's the director of wagering development, right up our alley, guys. I've met him a few times. He also helps run the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. He will be with us the second half of the show on Tuesday after we talk about these recaps from Santa Anita and also from Aqueduct. Guys, it's been a real pleasure. It's been a long night, and you guys know why, so I appreciate all the effort you've put in, as do our viewers. Everyone, good luck on Saturday, Aqueduct. For my co-host, Pete Visco, and Saratoga Special's own Paul Haller, this has been Howard Kravitz, episode 183 of the HHH Racing Podcast. Check myself out and Kyle Roscoe this Saturday on the Hawthorne YouTube channel, starting at 3 p.m. Eastern, as we try to tackle the best handicappers in the country and win ourselves a seat, the Breeders' Cup Betting Challenge. Take care, everyone. Have a great night. Bye-bye.